All right, so this is question 18, I believe. Uh, and we do have two classes this time around. We got main, we got test. Let's go look at test and see if we find any actually any private or static variables or methods. Right, so we got public string data, no problem with that. We got a constructor that takes in no arguments. That's good. And then we got an overloaded two, or not overloaded, overridden two-string method, meaning that maybe when we print this out, instead of printing out the type of the object and where it's located in memory, right? It'll instead do this. It'll return data. So maybe that'll be useful down the line. But yeah, nothing in here that would make me instantly select D. So that's all right. Let's go ahead and start a main and see where that takes us, right? So this first guy over here looks like we are declaring a pointer for a test array, right? And it's called array. And we actually do give it memory for a array of size 3, so 0, 1, 2. This is a test array. All right. For the next three lines, we got a for loop. It's an enhanced for loop, or in other words, I guess a read-only for loop. In other words, this loop in its current state cannot modify the contents of this array. What it'll actually do is this, right? It'll make that local variable t, right, as denoted here. And what it's going to do is it's going to iterate over the array. And what it really does is when it iterates, so let's say we're on the first iteration of the loop, right? It copies the contents of array index 0 into T, and then it starts to affect T, right? The only sort of connection that T and the array has is at like the start of the loop. So the start of the loop, you copy whatever's in array of your index, and we're currently at 0. You copy it into T. So I guess T really is equal to null here because array index 0 is pointing to nothing. And then you just work on T. You don't work on the array, right? So in other words, the array does not change. So what does the loop do, right? I copy over the contents, and then apparently I give T a new test object, right? So I don't know. Let me go draw an arrow here. Test. And what does the default constructor do? It gives data, or I guess it assigns data to the string D. So we'll just write D here, right? Okay. And what does the next line do? Oh, wait. The next line tells us to iterate, right? So now we're at index 1. So what does index 1 have? It has nothing. It points to nothing. It points to null, right? Okay, so what does the next line tell me to do? It tells me to give T a new test. It doesn't tell me to give array index 1 a new test. It tells me to give T a new test. So that's what we'll do, right? And of course, the test object, it's going through the constructor and it's getting its data assigned to D, right? And then of course you can imagine that, we do the same thing for array 2, we copy its contents over, it's null, and then we give T a new test. It looks like this. What I'm trying to say is that these three lines are completely useless. They don't do anything to this array. They don't do anything for the code. In fact, if you put it through IntelliJ or maybe even Eclipse, it'll probably end up telling you that this is redundant code. It doesn't do anything. We're not really doing anything with T, right? We make an object just to wipe it clean on the next iteration, right? And then after we're done with the loop, T's gone, right? Like T's gone after this line. So this loop has effectively done nothing but attempt to trick you. That is it, right? So after we're done with these three lines, we arrive at these two lines, right? So it's saying that array at index 1 is equal to new test. So here we are actually accessing the array and altering it, right? So what are we doing? I guess we can kind of write it like this. It's up to you. If you wanted to write it in the box, it's totally fine. And I typically like doing that for strings, but when I'm working with different objects and strings, sometimes I like doing this, or sometimes I'll literally just put it in here if the contents are small enough, but it's personal preference. Array of index 1 is equal to a new test. All right, so we're making a new object of type test, right? And now we have to throw it into the default constructor and get that data is equal to D. So it's equal to D right now, right? But then in the next line, we do array of index 1 dot data is equal to A. And that's totally legal because string data is public, right? So we're just going to change it to A, right? And now I have another read-only for loop or enhanced for loop, whatever you would like to call it. And what we have to do is make another local variable named t and do pretty much the same thing we did here. I guess in regards to this line. So we're going to copy over the contents of array 0 and well, the contents of array 0 is really null, right? So when we when we go out to print t, you might think that we may get a null exception error, right? But the print functions in Java have a cool thing. They have a null checker, right? So instead of it going to t, realizing it's null, but then trying to access a toString method, it's just going to realize that it's null and then print out to the screen null, right? So it's not going to crash. It's not going to give you a null exception or something like that, or something adjacent to like a segmentation fault in C. No, it's just it's gonna notice that the object T points to null, so then it's gonna print out null without trying to access a toString, right? Okay, so that's as for iteration. I guess you can say 0, right? So moving on to the next index. What is T assigned to? T is assigned to the contents of array index 1, which happens to be this test object. So I can say that it's pointing to this test object, test. It's a copy, right? So we copied over the contents here, and we kind of gave it to T. So now what we're going to do, well, we're going to print out T, right? We are printing out the object T, right? Or I guess the object being pointed to by T, whatever you'd like to say. Um, and when we do that, of course, we have to invoke T's toString method. And what is T's toString method? It's that overridden method that we defined, and it's just going to return T's data, right? So T's data is A, and we move on, right? We move on to the last index. So what is array of index 2 pointing to? It's pointing to nothing. So of course, when I do this print statement here, it'll realize that T is pointing to nothing. So then it'll print out null. So looking at our answer choices, it looks like we're gonna have to select D, not because the program crashed, but because our answer is simply not there, right? Yeah, it's definitely worth knowing that these print statements have null checkers, so they won't crash your code. They'll actually print out null gracefully, right? So we can go ahead and check to see if D is the correct answer for 18, and it looks like a yes. I will see you guys in the next video.